So thanks very much for joining this web class. And tonight we're going to look at what food is right for you. And when we start looking at this web class, why is eating right for you so important? Well, we know for weight management, it's incredibly important, for energy, for hormone balance. So by the way, hormones are chemical messengers that tell your bodies what to do. And so we've got to be eating foods that help stabilize and balance our hormones. We're going to touch on gut health. We're going to look at mood and how you feel. We're going to look at quality of life. And if you stay around to the end, I'm going to give you an opportunity to get the BPO program for free. So the BPO program is a 6-week eating program that really tells you, how to eat right for you on a much deeper level. And so if you hang around to the end, I'll give you an opportunity to get that for free. Okay. So why is eating right for you so important? Well, it's really the end of the fad diet, at the end of following trends. It's the end of trying what your friends are doing and failing. And the reason being is because you're all different, and it's about finding the right diet for you. And so when we start looking at, there's a lot of different diets out there. There's a lot of confusion out there. And, most of the diets, they can be good diets, but it's about whether they work for you or not. And so tonight I want to help you discover, how to eat right for you. So we're going to start finding out, what are the best foods to serve for your unique body, your genetics, your lifestyle. Start finding out what food is really right for you to eat every day because you are unique. Right. So this web class is educational. Hopefully it'll be inspirational, raise your awareness, and obviously we're looking at diet and nutrition support. So it isn't meant for prescription, diagnosis, treatment or a cure. So what you're going to learn tonight is why fad diets and trends have actually created a sick, tired and overweight society. And a lot of what we've been told around what to eat, we've been told by the food industry. And this is a big part of the problem. We're going to find how do we find the right foods that are right and unique for you? And so we're going to start that process tonight. We're going to look at the foods that are actually harming your body and health, and which of these foods and look to move away from them. And we're going to look at some of the nutrients that are the most important for your body and your health. So what are some of these key nutrients that we need to make sure you've got enough energy, to make sure you've got hormonal balance, to make sure you've got a strong immune system. All right. We're also going to look at how can you ensure that you're getting all of the nutrients your body needs. All right, because this is actually very challenging in the modern world. And then I also want to show how it doesn't have to be expensive and out of reach to be, to eat right and to be healthy. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about me. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Ben Warren. I'm a clinical nutritionist. I did my master's degree in nutrition. We did a pilot study of 28 Maori, and we actually reversed the parameters of type 2 diabetes in 10 weeks using diet alone. I've been in clinical practice now for just about 15 years. I'm clinical director of the BPO Health Clinic. So we're probably New Zealand's largest natural health clinic. And so tonight I'm going to be sharing with you not only some of the latest research, but also my experience for the last 15 years in getting results for real people like you. Okay, so for me it's all about getting results. So my whole life I've been a keen student. It didn't matter whether I was playing football or running. I've always just been somebody who's always wanted to do it better. And at the age of 15, my dad gave me a set of golf clubs and I started playing golf. I got recruited to University of South Carolina in Aiken and met my wife Linda, who was a Kiwi, and I moved to New Zealand. And what happened was I had a health problem. I had a bad back that I thought was from golf, and it turned out that what was driving my bad back was the fact that I had a very severe dairy intolerance, and that my immune system was reacting to dairy proteins, which was disabling my small intestine and basically the nerve innervation from my spine. And so from there, I had this insight that nutrition had such a huge impact on how we feel. And in fact, within a few weeks of changing my diet, the asthma that I'd had since I was about 6 years old disappeared. And I had this moment of, my gosh, I can't believe that what we eat has such a huge impact on how we feel. And at that moment, it turned off me wanting to hit golf balls, and it turned on this insatiable desire to learn about nutrition and learn about how the body works. And that continues to drive me today, and wanting to share this information continues to drive me today. So here's a little picture of the BPO team. This was a Christmas party. I think that was not last year, the year before maybe. So let me talk about what we're doing is not working in New Zealand. So when we look at this, heart disease is the #1 killer of New Zealanders, 44% of deaths. New registrations for cancer in New Zealand have increased by 18.7%. So even as in the last 9 years, time measurement. So even though, you know, we're getting earlier detection for cancer, you know, and things like that, which are all good, this cancer incidence is going up 18.7%. I greatly believe this is related to our environment and what we're eating. In New Zealand, obesity has tripled in just over the last 3 decades. And the Centers of Disease Control states that 1 in 3 children born in 2000 will develop type 2 diabetes. 1 in 3. So if you've got an 18-year-old in your life, 1 in 3 chance they're going to develop type 2 diabetes. We'll talk about why a little bit later. All right. So we can see that what we're doing is not working. So let's play one of my favorite games. Okay. So guess the food. What food do you think this is? Have a look. I mean, it's got a bunch of chemicals in it. It's got a little bit of lemon essential oil, which is probably, you know, pretty much the only food in it. So that's actually a flavoring. That was actually, according to Fast Food Nation, the flavoring that Burger King was using for strawberry in strawberry milkshake. All right. And so obviously there's no strawberry in it. And this is part of the problem. Part of the problem is the foods we're eating in the modern world, they don't have nutrition in it. They're not really, to be honest with you, they're not even foods. They are modern day versions of foods. Now, by the way, that's a stock photo. So there's some pistachios there. They're fine to eat. All right. And so I have no problem at all with you eating pistachios. And so part of the problem is in the modern world, we are overfed and undernourished, which means it's really easy to get enough calories, but it's really difficult to get enough nutrition. And so this processed food aspect is one of the major problems with this, is that it's really, you know, like, so if you're hungry and you go to the petrol station, there's calories everywhere. All right. And so you can get calories, but if you're trying to get nutrition and you go to the petrol station, you know, there's actually nothing to eat. All right, because, you know, maybe a banana, because when you look at the foods, we're overfed and undernourished. So the key in the modern world is how do we get the nutrients we need for our bodies to work, not the calories. Completely different to thousands of years ago when we were struggling to get calories. So when we start looking at this, my first top tip, number 1 for tonight, is to avoid processed foods as much as possible. And again, I'm going to show you like how to do this a little bit later with an opportunity to get the Be Pure program for free. Okay, so the Be Pure program will show you how to do this. So tonight I'm going to have time to show you what to do and why you should do it, and then the Be Pure program will show you how to actually do it. So research has shown that as our weight increases, the risk of the following conditions also increases. So things like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cancers, high blood pressure, these kind of things that we want to avoid are all associated with being overweight. And so the more that we can maintain a normal weight and a normal body mass index, okay, the better. So it's very, very important. And so we'll talk about sort of managing weight shortly. So how do we get so overweight? Okay, I want to go back to 1984, and probably one of the biggest trends that we've seen that's probably, in my opinion, has done one of the most damage to the health of people in the Western world. And this is, in 1984, it was that we were told to eat less fat. Okay, so we were all told low-fat diet. And the reason we were told a low-fat diet is because back in 1984, it was believed that when you eat saturated fat, the saturated fat increases your risk of heart disease through cholesterol. We now know that that's not to be true. So a lot of research is now showing that saturated fat does not increase the risk of having a heart attack. But having said that, in 1984, we didn't know that. So we were told to eat less fat. So we started eating like low-fat pizza, low-fat sour cream. Think about that. How do you even do that? Low-fat sour cream. And then things like low-fat pepperoni, another low-fat foods. And then you still got to eat. And what we've done, we've replaced those foods that had a lot of fat in, and we've still got to get calories. So we've replaced that by eating more carbohydrates. So we're eating more junk food. We're eating more packaged processed foods. We're eating more bread. We're eating more, breakfast cereals, for example. And so what I want to show you the obesity rates for the US, and then we're going to show you New Zealand as well, because I know many of you are from New Zealand. But so this is 1985, the obesity rate. So the dark blues under 10 to 14%, light blues under 10%. I'm going to go forward 2 years at a time. So look what happens as we go forward 2 years at a time. So I'm watching this with you. Okay, 15 to 19% in 93 now. Okay, obesity rates. Look at yellow. That's at 20 to 24% now in 2000. 25 to 29% of the population obese. Going forward, the red there's 30 to 35% now. And there's 2003. Some of the latest statistics. There's a comparison between 1985 and 2013. So when you look at obesity in New Zealand, it's tripled since the late 1970s, 9% in the late 1970s, 33%, 2013, it's tripled. Now, interestingly enough, in that same time period, carbohydrate consumption has increased by 41%. So we're eating a lot more carbohydrates. And when you eat more carbohydrates, your blood sugar levels go up very quickly. And your body's got a hormone to protect against high blood sugar levels. It's called insulin. And insulin's job is to take that sugar and store it away in your cells. If you're exercising, it stores it away in muscle. Well, it gets driven into muscle to be used in the muscle for exercise. But if you're sitting at your desk, what happens is the energy from those carbohydrates, the sugars, the glucose, gets stored into fat cells. So you get increased fat storage and obesity. So you can see that this weight gain in the Western world is very much coupled with, as we've increased carbohydrate consumption, we've increased obesity. So let's look at this a little bit closer and look at blood sugar and the fat storage cycle. So whenever we eat, we have a blood sugar response from the foods we're eating, because invariably most foods have, like if you have a meal with some vegetables and some meat, the vegetables are carbohydrates. So that your body will break those down and get the glucose from it, get the sugar from it. Now we want nice, stable blood sugar levels. Stable blood sugar levels mean stable mood. Stable blood sugar levels mean stable weight, stable hormones. Okay, stable energy. So we want stable blood sugar levels. It's an absolute key for us going forward, is to have stable blood sugar levels. But unfortunately, due to the foods most people are eating, when they're eating, they're getting high blood sugar levels. Okay, and as our blood sugar levels go up, high blood sugar levels are really damaging to our body. And our body's got some mechanisms to protect against these high blood sugar levels. The primary mechanism is this hormone, insulin. And so insulin's job is, like I said, is to open up the gates on the cells so the sugar can go into the cells. And so if you're not exercising, that's going to be in fat cells. So this is the primary mechanism for fat storage within our body from food. All right, so essentially weight gain, weight loss is primarily hormonal. Yes, calories count, absolutely, but it's primarily hormonal. We've got to stabilize our blood sugar levels as much as possible. That's the key. Okay, so then if we're not type 2 diabetic, so our body's still responding to insulin in the right way, our blood sugar levels then start dropping. And as our blood sugar levels drop, you start seeing this little curve at the bottom there where we have low blood sugar levels. Now, when we have low blood sugar levels, you may start getting a little bit hangry, like hungry and angry. You may have experienced that. I know I do if I don't eat. And so what then happens is, because glucose is incredibly important for brain function, so you're going to then get cravings. So your body's going to want you to eat something to try and stabilize your blood sugar levels. And if you don't eat, actually you get a cortisol response, which is a hormone that's associated with it's a stress hormone. Okay, and to try and raise your blood sugar levels. So people are going through this blood sugar high, blood sugar low, blood sugar high, blood sugar low, many times through the day, increasing the capacity for fat storage. And then as the blood sugar levels go up and down, your mood also goes up and down as well. Okay, so not only is stable blood sugar levels the key to stable mood, stable weight, and stable energy. So it's very, very important. We want to stabilize blood sugar levels. So let's look a little bit more at some of the foods we should be eating and not eating to stabilize blood sugar levels. And then we're going to look at what are the foods that are going to be right for you to stabilize your blood sugar levels, to help your weight, to help your hormones, to help your energy, to help your mood. Okay. So the first one we're looking at is sugar. All right. Now, just the fact that you're sitting at home listening to a webinar about sugar probably tells me you already know this. You already know that we should be moving away from sugar as much as possible, right? Now, if you don't know that, well, if you just apply that one thing out of tonight, my gosh, that's going to be life-changing for you. All right. So we've got to be moving away from sugar as much as possible. The reason being is that sugar basically turns to sugar, within our body, glucose, quite quickly. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But what happens is our blood sugar levels go up, and high blood sugar levels are obviously damaging to our body. But what sugar does, it over revs the cells of our kind of little engines called mitochondria that make energy at a cellular level. So sugar causes this sort of over revving and damage to our cells. And that's why it's so problematic long term. So top tip number 2, well, that's just one reason why it's so problematic long term. Top tip number 2 is we really got to avoid sugar. We've got to try and minimize sugar as much as possible. Now, sugar, usually when it's found in, say, a fruit like an apple, obviously has some fructose, some sugar in it, but the sugar in the apple's tied in and bound to the cellulose, bound to the inulin. It's got vitamin C, it's got phytonutrients that all help slow down the uptake of the sugar. So in nature, it's bound to these things that help control our body's response to sugar. But unfortunately, in the modern world, we've taken the sugar away from the nutrition, and we're able just to give ourselves sugar. Another food that we've really got to be moving away from is processed grains. Sorry to be the food police. Don't worry, there's plenty of other foods we can be eating. I'll talk about those in just a moment. But processed grains, they turn to sugar in your body faster than sugar. So let me ask you this question. Which of these spike your blood sugar levels more? So which of these make your blood sugar levels go up the fastest? Okay, so let's go with maybe Cocoa Pops, breakfast cereal, or sugar. So like a white cube of table sugar, or cornflakes, the breakfast cereal. Now it's actually cornflakes. So cornflakes has a glycemic index of 92, Cocoa Pops is 77, and sugar's 68. Still incredibly high when you compare that to, say, cabbage that's got a glycemic index of 15, or kale, which again is 15. Very, very low. So we want to eat foods with a very low glycemic index that stabilize our blood sugar levels. Now, I know that seems counterintuitive that these processed grains have a higher glycemic index than sugar, but let me explain why. It's because when you take grains have a lot of starches in them. You've probably heard that. People say, and like potatoes got a lot of starch in them as well. And so when you take starches, by the way, are just glucose molecules stacked on top of each other. And so when you take that grain and you grind it up into a flour and you eat it, what you do is essentially just get all of these columns of glucose coming into your digestive system. And then it's really easy for your body's enzyme amylase to just knock over the columns of glucose and get the glucose from it. Okay, very, very quickly. Whereas sugar, like table sugar, sucrose, is actually a disaccharide. It's two sugar molecules joined together. It takes a little while for your body to break them apart. Okay, so we've got to be moving away from processed grains as much as possible. So that's top tip number 3. So then really we want to start looking about how to eat right for you. And now this is something that I refer to as macronutrient profiling. Macronutrient profiling looks at levels of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates you're eating, and really helps guide you to eat the right foods for you, not only genetically, but also environmentally. And so there's some really nice benefits from eating the right foods from you, and we're going to get into that in this next section. Okay, so you need to know what are the optimal mix of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, because what it will do will give you more energy for longer. Okay, so how many of you sitting at home want more energy for longer, right? I don't know about you, but I know everything I do is really designed around energy and improving energy production. It's going to help you lose weight by minimizing excess calories, because you don't want to be bringing on excess calories, because yes, if you don't burn those excess calories off, you will be storing them as body fat. So it's going to help you minimize that from occurring. It's going to make you feel full for longer, which is fantastic. Being full basically means you're not hungry. It makes it much easier to walk past a bakery when you're full. Whereas if you're trying to lose weight from calorie restriction, it takes a lot of willpower. So the key is to not eating the wrong foods. The key is to be full, so that then you don't want to eat them. Okay, and then we're also going to look at balancing your hormones through balancing your blood sugar levels, because a lot of people are kind of wasting their hormone resources just stabilizing their blood sugar levels. And hormones control everything that's important in your life. So we want to make sure you've got enough raw materials for the hormones within your body. And then we also want to make sure you've got enough raw materials to build hormones. So these are primarily fats and then proteins. All right, so we've got to be making sure that you're getting enough of these raw materials to actually then build the hormones you need within your life. So let's look at this first macronutrient, which is carbohydrates. So we've already spoken about sort of processed grains, potatoes we're throwing there, and sugar. Now, if you're trying to manage your weight, we've got to be moving away from these as much as possible. Reason being, if they've got the least nutrition in for basically a lot of calories. All right, so we've got to be trying to move away from these as much as possible, and we should be focusing on eating fruit and vegetables, particularly leafy green vegetables. If you could try and move to getting most of your calories for carbohydrates from vegetables, my gosh, if you just did that one thing alone, you're going to see huge impacts in your health and for many people, their waistline. Okay, so we've got to be trying to eat as many vegetables, and particularly the color, diversity of vegetables as well. So there's a ladder of nutrition for carbohydrates. At the bottom of this ladder is these processed foods, high sugar, damaged fat, packaged foods that the food company has been telling us that that's what we should eat. And then stepping up from there, we've got white bread. Now, stepping up from there, brown bread. Now, just the fact that you're listening to me on this webinar kind of tells me that, well, I'd expect you to be at the brown bread level, to be honest, which means that, you know, like given the choice between white and brown bread, you go, you know what, I'll have the brown bread. I'll have that extra fiber. I'll have that extra nutrition. And then stepping up from there, you'd be looking at making a homemade sourdough bread with ancient whole grain flour. All right. And then stepping up from there, you'd be looking at eating the whole grain, like soaked whole grains, things like millet, buckwheat, quinoa, rice, even porridge, rolled oats. Okay. So when nutritionists talk about eating whole foods and whole grains being a good source of nutrition, what they're talking about is eating the whole grain. Okay. They're not talking about taking a grain and grinding it up into a flour and then eating it. Okay. So we've got to be eating whole grains. And then stepping up from there, okay, we'd be looking at vegetables and leafy greens. Why? Because they have the most nutrition in per calorie. And that's the key in the modern world. Remember, we've got to try and get as much nutrition per calorie, because in the modern world, getting nutrition from your diet is very, very difficult. Okay. The next macronutrients are proteins. Okay. So these are things like eggs, dairy products, fish, meat, nuts and seeds, and beans and lentils if you're vegetarian. Now, proteins are incredibly important. They help stabilize blood sugar levels, make us full for longer. They're very, very important for triggering processes within your body like mTOR that makes you rebuild and regrow. So very, very important for maintaining muscle mass. Okay, so it's incredibly important that we're eating adequate protein, especially as we age and as we get older, to try and stop some of this muscle mass loss as we get older. And then the final macronutrient is fat. Okay, so when I talk about fat, I'm talking about natural, undamaged fats. Okay, so at the moment there's two camps on fat in the world. There's the butter camp and the margarine camp. The margarine camp is shrinking quickly, but as you can tell, I'm in the butter camp. Okay, so I have no problem with you eating natural, natural, undamaged fats, things like avocados, olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, butter. Even saturated fats like coconut oil or even lard. And the reason being is because, you know, I want you to be able to eat enough fat to provide the raw materials not only for your hormones, but also to rebuild your body. Fat also makes us feel full for longer. And believe it or not, eating fat does not necessarily make us fat, because the primary hormone that makes us store fat is insulin, and insulin's triggered by carbohydrates. Okay, so natural, undamaged fats are very, very important. So let's start looking at what's your genetic makeup. Let's start looking at what foods perhaps you should be eating to start being at your healthiest, to have more energy, to help manage your weight. Now, at one end of the continuum is the Inuit. The Inuit were getting 80% of their calories from fats and proteins. They were very, very healthy doing this. They had very low rates of heart disease and cancer on their native diet. Okay. Also at the Inuit, or this protein and fat end of the range, you had some tribes of Native American Indians, and they were getting 80% of their calories from actually from buffalo, red meat. And again, very, very healthy doing that. Like I mentioned before, I did my master's thesis on Maori diet, and Maori traditionally had a very high fat, high protein, low carbohydrate diet, and a very, very healthy culture on their native diet. At the other end of the continuum, there's African tribesmen. These are more carbohydrate type people genetically. They were getting 80% of their calories from whole grains, a grain called like pez. Okay, very, very healthy doing this. They had goats, and they had goat milk, and they had goats on special occasions, but they didn't get to eat a lot of goat because they just didn't have enough of them. And they were very, very healthy on their native diet. So there's this continuum between sort of Inuit protein and fat type person, and then African tribesmen, more of a carbohydrate type person. Now, the first thing I want to say to you about this is that I believe we're eating too many carbohydrates for our genetics. And the reason I believe this is because, well, the African tribesmen were the best suited to eating carbohydrates of any people on the planet. And yet they weren't eating any sugar, and they weren't eating any refined grains, processed grains that act on your body faster than sugar. They were eating the whole grain. And when you eat the whole grain, your body's enzymes go to work on the outside of that grain to get the glucose out of it over the next couple of hours. All right. Now we can actually genetically test you and see how many copies of a gene you have called the AMY1 gene. And if you've got low copies of the AMY1 gene, it means it puts you in an 8-fold risk of being obese and getting type 2 diabetes from eating carbohydrates. So what does it mean? It means that you're not very well suited genetically to eating carbohydrates. Most likely it means that you're on the Inuit side, on the protein and fat side of this continuum, okay, to be able to stabilize your blood sugar levels. So let's go ahead and start seeing where you are on this continuum. So let's go ahead and get you to imagine that it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, so it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you're hungry. So I'm going to give you a piece of fruit. So let's go ahead and I'm going to give you an apple. So just imagine that you're going to eat that apple at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because you're hungry. Now just ask yourself, do you feel, well, usually I say this to a whole crowd of people and I can see their hands raising, so I can't see this with you in this web class, but how many of you, you can just raise your hand at home if you like, how many of you can eat an apple and you'll stay full for 2-3 hours, so you get through the afternoon and you know, get through to dinner time? Now, usually when I say this at a seminar, about a third, 20 to 30% actually, of the audience will raise their hand. Now, how many of you after eating that apple are actually more hungry of eating that apple than before they ate the apple? Now, for me, I'm like that. So if you gave me an apple at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when I'm hungry, I'm just going to look around and go, that doesn't even count. I'm still hungry, okay? And so the chances are, if you're doing that, again, usually at a seminar, usually maybe 30 to 50% of the people will raise their hands. They're more hungry after eating the apple. And then if neither one of those are you, then I'm going to pick that you're somewhere in the middle. So how about I give you an apple and a handful of almonds? Are you going to then be full then? Okay, well then that means that you're probably more in the middle. So let's look a little bit more at what's happening there. So first of all, this first group, when they eat the apple and they stay full for 2, 3, 4 hours, my wife is like that, Linda. It means most likely they're on the carbohydrate side, which means their body processes that apple very slowly, gets the energy from it slowly. It means that they probably have very stable blood sugar levels, okay, from eating that apple, okay, which probably means that, you know, carbohydrates are going to be a great food source for them, all right? Could we even say that potentially, genetically, they're best suited to eating carbohydrates? Now, at the other end of the continuum, the protein type, you can see, Ben, I'm on my way to being a protein type, okay? So when I eat an apple, I'm more hungry after eating it, which means my body takes that apple and it just gets the energy from it really quickly. My blood sugar level goes up really quickly and it drops really quickly. And so then I have low blood sugar levels, okay? And obviously that high blood sugar levels means I then get an insulin response, which means I generally will gain fat more from eating carbohydrates. So these people on the protein and fat end of the continuum, I like to term carbohydrate sensitive or carbohydrate intolerant, which means that they don't go well on carbohydrates. These people invariably, you know, they've only got to look at a muffin and they put on weight. I like to joke about that. Obviously do a little bit more than look maybe, all right? And so we've got to be, so these people, these protein and fat people on that end of the continuum go much better having protein and fats, actually plenty of fat. They actually will lose weight by having a high fat, high protein diet. They'll have more energy from having a high protein, high fat diet. They have more resources for their hormones. Their blood work will improve. Often you'll see their total, their cholesterol profile improve in regards to ratios. And then if you're in the middle, more of a mixed type, well, then you get to choose a little bit of the carbohydrates and a little bit of the proteins and fats. And the key really is eating and staying full for a long period of time, okay? Because if you're staying full, that means that you're getting stable blood sugar levels from the foods you're eating. So we have at Be Pure, we've got our own food pyramids, and they look like this. And at one end of the continuum, you've got your carbohydrate type, so green vegetables. You'll notice the green vegetables are the base for all of these foods, all of these pyramids. So you have green vegetables. And then stepping up, you have starchy vegetables, and then gluten-free whole grains, and then fruits, and then a small block of nuts, proteins, fats, and seeds for the carbohydrate type. And if we just jump to the protein type continuum, you see green vegetables is the base. and then a big block of fats and proteins. So these people may actually need meat for breakfast to stabilize their blood sugar levels in order for them to stay full, in order for them to be able to lose weight, and actually in order to improve their blood work. And then you'll see a small block of nuts and seeds, and then fruit and starchy vegetables. They actually have to be careful with fruit and starchy vegetables because their bodies are so carbohydrate sensitive or carbohydrate intolerant. And then, of course, the mixed types are kind of balanced. They sit in the middle. So if I was to sum up nutrition, what I'd be saying around what foods we should be eating is eat whole foods, okay, fresh as possible. So that means eating in season. Okay, and when you're eating in season, you're eating as fresh as possible, and we'll talk about why that's important. That's coming up. And then we're also looking to eat the foods that make you feel full the longest. So eat whole, natural foods as fresh as possible, okay, that make you feel full the longest. Now, the Be Pure program is a 6-week program that is in its full version. It's an incredible program that gives you a questionnaire that through answering this questionnaire helps indicate where you are on this continuum. And then based on that, if you're a carbohydrate type, we give you the shopping list and the recipes you need, okay, to actually eat this way. And if you come out as a mixed type, we give you the shopping list and the recipes you need to eat that way. And if you come out as a protein type, again, we give you the shopping list and the recipes you need to eat that way. For me, it's a Be Pure essential, a foundational aspect to stabilizing your blood sugar levels, okay, and then being able to manage weight, being able to increase energy, being able to give the raw materials your body needs to build hormones. Okay, so at the end of the web class, I'm going to give you an opportunity to get the Be Pure program for free. So just hang around, and we'll talk about that later. So top tip number 4 is to eat right for your macronutrient profile. It means eat right for you. Eat the right foods that stabilize your blood sugar level. Eat foods that make you stay full the longest. Okay, let's talk about gut health. Gut health, for those of you who follow my work, you'll know that I'm a huge fan of gut health. And the reason being is the digestive system is the key to your health, because this is where you break down the food. This is not only where you break down the food, but this is the home of your immune system. So 70 to 80% of the immune molecules your body makes are located in the digestive system. And so, because the reason being for that is whenever we eat any food, our immune system has to look at the foods we're eating going, is that food we're eating particularly the proteins, is that protein we're eating food, or is that protein we're eating a virus or a bacteria? Because viruses and bacteria are just proteins too. So our immune system has to differentiate between the foods we're eating which are food and the foods we're eating which are viruses and bacteria or have them attached to them. Now, unfortunately, we're eating a common everyday food that our body's immune system thinks is a virus or bacteria, and this food it's a protein, and it's a protein that's found in wheat, barley, and rye, and it's a protein called gluten. Okay, now gluten is really problematic. Okay, so when you're looking at gluten, it's just a protein, like I say, that's found in wheat, barley, and rye. Now, when you look at gluten, I know we've been eating bread for thousands of years, right? So you might be sitting at home going, Ben, surely we've been eating bread for thousands of years. Yes, we have. But I can tell you the bread we're eating now is nothing like the bread that we used to eat. It's nothing like the bread that your grandma's eating. So due to the hybridization of grain, the gluten content's doubled, the lectin levels, which are a molecule that plants make to protect themselves from the environment, have increased as well. So when you start looking at gut issues, the gut has the ability to really affect many, many systems within your body. It's got, we know the gut-brain axis around mood, depression. It can cause problems with sinus tracts, and even it's been associated with joint issues and systemic inflammation, fatigue, thyroid issues, and then obviously any kind of gut issue. So whether that's, you get acid reflux, heartburn, indigestion, whether you get bloating, gas production up or down, bloating around the belly button, or maybe you get diarrhea or constipation or ulcerative colitis or Crohn's or one of these IBS, any kind of those, you've got a gut issue. Okay, so we've got to be moving away from gluten. So I wanted to show you some research that looked at, is gluten safe for non-celiacs? We know that celiacs have a major problem with gluten, right? They have a very strong IgA immune response to gluten. Right? So in this study, they looked at the production of an interleukin-15 inflammatory marker when celiacs and non-celiac individuals were challenged with gliadin peptides gluten. They gave them some bread. And what they found is that gluten elicited its harmful effect through an interleukin-15 innate immune response on all the individuals with and without celiac. So it didn't matter whether they were celiac or not, gluten still drove inflammation, still drove it, okay? It's still problematic. So my top tip number 5 is avoid gluten. All right, now I know that rolls off the tongue really easy. Again, in the Be Pure program, we'll show you how to do this. We'll make it super easy for you to avoid gluten, because right now, I'm sure many of you are kind of going, yeah, Ben, I get that, but how am I going to do this? The Be Pure program will show you how. Okay, there's lots of other things you can be in, lots of gluten-free whole grains if you're on the carbohydrate side, lots of incredible food that you can still be eating. Okay, and so my general recommendation is if you have anything at all wrong with you, I'd recommend going gluten-free. All right, so if you've got anything at all wrong with you, anything, okay, I'd recommend going gluten-free. So top tip number 5 is avoid gluten. Okay, so while we're talking about gluten, because it drives a lot of inflammation, let's talk about how what you're eating is contributing to all of those aches and pains that you may have. All right, so inflammation, and another way of saying inflammation is collateral damage from your immune system. And so another way of saying inflammation, again, would be, well, I know that if somebody has inflammation, if they've got a lot of aches and pains, okay, so you can do a blood marker like a C-reactive protein or an ESR, and you can see people's inflammation. Of course, you don't need to see it if you can feel it. So there's another food that we've got to be avoiding, okay, because it drives inflammation, and that's omega-6 fatty acids. So we want to decrease omega-6 fatty acids because it's like pouring petrol on the fire of inflammation. So we've got to minimize the sources of omega-6. So these are like cereals and breads. Well, we've already spoken about them. They're not doing us any favors anyway, right? So let's move away from them. And then things like cheap vegetable oils like canola oil, okay? Omega-6 fatty acids, really problematic, driving this inflammation. And then being aware that grain-fed animal meats, especially from unhealthy animals, will have a higher level of omega-6 fatty acids, which is again problematic. And so the exception to this is gamma-linoleic acid, which is like evening primrose and borage oil. This is very beneficial omega-6, particularly for reproductive aged females. Okay, and so then we want to increase our omega-3 levels because omega-3 controls inflammation. It's like putting water on the fire of inflammation. So we've got to be eating more foods that have omega-3s to help control inflammation. So fresh cold water fish like salmon, green leafy vegetables, there they are again. I'm a huge fan of people eating green leafy vegetables. Beans and lentils, grass-fed animal meats, free-range eggs, flax, chia seeds, walnuts, fish oil. All right, these things are all going to help control inflammation. We want to try and control inflammation not only because we want to control aches and pains, but we also know that low-grade systemic inflammation is highly associated with many of today's modern diseases like heart disease, even cancer. Okay, so we want to try and control inflammation as much as possible. So when you look at the research around fish oil supplementation, it's quite incredible. It's been shown to increase resting metabolic rate by 14%. 14%, that means you burn 14% more calories doing nothing, okay? We also want to look at increases the rate of fat oxidation during exercise by 27%, all right? So that means if you're going to the gym to lose body fat, you're basically going to be 27% more effective by having a fish oil first. We know it's highly anti-inflammatory via a number of mechanisms, and then it decreases triglycerides and increases HDL beneficial cholesterol. So I highly recommend taking a high-quality fish oil like Be Pure 3. Okay, so when you look at Be Pure 3, it took me 3 years to develop Be Pure 3, and I used to recommend Nordic Naturals, which is a wonderful product, but it comes all the way from Norway, and it touches a lot of hands before it gets here, and it's incredibly expensive when it comes to being here. And so I wanted to develop a fish oil that was incredibly pure, incredibly strong, sustainably caught from the South Pacific. So Be Pure 3 has 1,400 milligrams of EPA DHA. That's equivalent, depends on the fish oil, but it's equivalent to, say, 6 to 8 regular fish oils. So it's very, very strong. It's also very pure. So we batch test for heavy metals and for oxidization to make sure there's no heavy metals. So batch test comes back at 0.01 parts per million. All right. And so at the moment, they're dumping a lot of cheap fish oils into the market because the research around the benefits of taking fish oils are so huge. All right. So I highly recommend that everybody take a high strength fish oil. So that's top tip number 6 is I highly recommend take a high strength fish oil to really help supply these omega-3 fatty acids to help control inflammation. Now, whether it's BPO3 or not, that's up to you, but I'd make sure that you're getting one that's pure and high strength, okay? All right, so then let's start looking about nutrients and how to get the nutrients you need to live the kind of life that you want to live, to get the results that you want, okay? So Linus Pauling, two-time Nobel Prize winner, said this: you can trace every sickness, disease, and every ailment to a mineral deficiency. Now, when he said that in the 1950s, that was pretty incredible, okay? These days, you look at that and go, well, yeah, you pretty much can, okay? Even genetic diseases now are being shown that you can mitigate, some of the epigenetic expression through nutrigenomics from nutrition. So we're seeing that nutrition has the power to even affect genetic issues. So anyway, when you look at B vitamins for energy, B vitamins are incredibly important for the metabolism of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. They're really important for red blood cell metabolism, okay, for building red blood cells that carry oxygen. The production of neurotransmitter and steroid hormones are dependent on B vitamins. And then a very important chemical recycling pathway called methylation, which is very important for energy production, but it's also got broad-reaching effects. And one of the research is currently looking at methylation around cancer, when the cycle's not working very well, driving cancer. So high B vitamin foods: beef liver, lamb, milk, mushrooms, spinach, legumes, almonds, whole grains. Now, it doesn't have to be beef liver. It could be lamb liver, it could be chicken liver. But to be honest with you, if you're not eating some liver fairly regularly, I can almost guarantee that you will be deficient in B vitamins, in regards to you'll not be getting the B vitamins that you need to live the kind of life that you want to live in regards to energy production, right? Another really important vitamin that you would know of, okay, is vitamin C. It's required for the synthesis of catecholamine and steroid hormones. It's also required for a multitude of enzyme reactions throughout your body, okay? And there's a recent study looking at New Zealand's vitamin C deficiency, and the University of Otago study showed that more than 2/3 of Kiwis over the age of 50 are low in vitamin C. More than 2/3, all right? So again, we're starting to see indicators that we're not getting the nutrients we need from our diet. And we're going to talk about this more in just a moment. And then magnesium, a very, very important mineral required for over 300 enzyme functions, promotes the synthesis of ATP, our energy molecule, stabilizes blood sugar levels. It's been shown to relax muscles. In the research, it's been shown to improve sleep. It's required for hormone synthesis. Now, unfortunately, magnesium content in our food sources is declining. I'll show you that research in a moment. But we've got to be eating high magnesium foods like almonds, green leafy vegetables, fish, eggs. Green leafy vegetables, again, very, very important. Pretty much best source of these foods, also minerals regarding magnesium. Okay, so this next 10 minutes of the webinar, before we finish up and start talking how to get the BPO program for free, I want to share with you like a 10-year period of my life. We're going to go through it in 10 minutes. Now, to be honest with you, this information is frightening. It took me a couple of years to come to terms with it. I don't expect you to come to terms with it right now, okay? But it's really, really important you notice. So when I did my master's degree, I had to get one of the most comprehensive nutrition analysis software programs that there is. So this software program is tied into the USDA database of the nutrients found in the food, okay? And so I was really excited about this. So I put my diet in the software, analyzed it, and I was shocked to see that I was deficient in 5 key nutrients. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so then I started blogging about this, and people started emailing me their diets. And I analyzed 7 or 8 diets, and I was shocked to see that, all of these people's diets, they were massively deficient in key nutrients. And I didn't understand why. So anyway, let me show you one of these diets. So this lady sent me her diet. She was having a homemade vegetable and apple juice with grated ginger 20 minutes before breakfast. Then she was basically having porridge for breakfast with some LSA, some chia seeds. For morning tea, she was having a handful of almonds. And then for lunch, she was having 2 cups of vegetable and chicken soup, a couple of rice breads, avocado and tuna, and a couple of mandarins. And then for afternoon tea, okay, she was having a couple of rice beds with tahini, a carrot, 2 fillets of teriyaki with steamed with lemon wedges, spinach and silver beet mixed, carrot parsnip and onion mashed, a cup of peas. A cup of peas, I'm always surprised about that. That's a lot of peas, right? But she obviously liked her peas. And then she was having a licorice tea before bed. So, I look at that diet and I think, that's a pretty good diet. And for those of you watching at home, you may look at that and go, yeah, that's a pretty good diet. All right. And so I thought it was a pretty good diet too. And so then what I did, I analyzed the nutrients she was getting from that diet and I was shocked. I looked at 10 key nutrients, and I looked at the RDA. So the RDA is recommended daily allowance. That's the minimum you need not to have a disease deficiency from nutrition, from not getting that nutrient. And then we looked at the SONA, which is the suggested optimal nutritional allowance. And this is what we found. Okay, so vitamin D, she was below minimum, below optimal. Vitamin E, below minimum, below optimal. Vitamin C, she was fine. Food folate, below minimum, below optimal. B3, niacin, below minimum, below optimal. B6, she hit minimums, below optimal. B1, hit the minimums, below optimal. Calcium, below minimum, below optimal. Selenium, below minimum, below optimal. And then zinc, she hit minimums, below optimal. So there she's eating a pretty good diet, and she only hit 40% of the RDAs and 10% of the SONA, the optimal. And so when you look at what they're needed for, she's stuffed, right? She's got no chance. And I couldn't understand this. And I was like, surely if this is the case, people would have studied this. So I went to the literature, I went to the research, and I was specifically looking around New Zealand research. And I was interested to see, if people have studied this, and they had. And I found it everywhere, like vitamin D. 84% of New Zealanders are vitamin D deficient, 84%. Okay, that's based at 80 nanomoles, which is the established level for health, 80 nanomoles. And so, now, by the way, we do make vitamin D from sunshine, but you need to be outside in summer between 11 and 3, getting full skin exposure without sunscreen to make vitamin D. Okay, the optimal amount. How many people are you doing that? Well, if you are, that's great. Okay, safe sun exposure. Now, we do get vitamin D from food as well, but you've got to be eating, actually, number one food source is Grandma's Remedy, cod liver oil. Okay, again, not many people are eating cod liver oil. We also get it from sardines, so you need to eat sardines twice a week. Are you doing that? Okay, another food, get it from pork fat, actually, lard. Okay, so you're hunting out lard. Okay, now if you haven't answered yes to those 4 questions, 84%. That's probably you. That's if you're not supplementing, right? So then iodine, 91% of New Zealanders tested are iodine deficient. Iodine's, the government know that. That's why they put potassium iodide in salt. But iodine's incredibly important for your thyroid. All right. And so if you're not getting enough iodine, there's a likelihood that your thyroid can't make this hormone because 4 molecules of iodine join together to build thyroxine, this hormone that your thyroid makes. Okay. B12, 40% of New Zealanders over 65 have some degree of B12 deficiency. Selenium, New Zealand blood selenium levels are 1.1. They're way too low. In one study in Florida looking at men who had a high risk of cancer, they split the group up into 2 groups. They were going to study them for 10 years. And what they found, they gave one group of men, by the way, a selenium supplement, the other group of men a placebo, fake pill. And what they found, they had to stop the study after 8 years because the men that were getting a selenium supplement, it decreased bowel and lung cancer by 50%, and it decreased prostate cancer in over 60% in those receiving selenium. Okay, so it looks like the selenium levels are 1.6, 1.7. That's where we need to be. So in New Zealand, we're too low. And then there's folate and folic acid. A recent study just came out showing that even though it's a Ministry of Health recommendation that pregnant mums in New Zealand take extra folic acid, they're not doing it. So currently they've got a committee together. They're looking at putting folic acid in bread like they did in Australia 10 years ago or so. Well, what about the mums that aren't pregnant? Don't they need more folic acid? Yeah, absolutely. Again, incredible research to the benefits of more folic acid. Iron deficiencies, common in menstruating females not eating red meat. Zinc deficiency is estimated over 50% of the population in New Zealand. And then there's boron and chromium, which are trace minerals in New Zealand soils that are deficient. And so then I started looking at soil agronomy, and because essentially nutrition comes from the soil. And I looked at, if it's not in our soil, it's not in our food, and mineral depleted soils. Now, I couldn't find any research on New Zealand in this, but in the USDA data shows this 38% decline. Another study shows 63% decline. Same deal in the UK. Listen, we're not paying farmers enough money to put trace minerals back into the soil. So what we're doing, we're intensively stripping out the minerals year after year and the mineral out of the soil, and the food we're eating is getting less and less nutrition in it. And then I got the final piece of the puzzle. I was talking at the Green Agriculture Innovation Awards, and Dr. Christine Jones was talking there. She's one of the top soil agronomists in the world. She's an Aussie lady. And she said to me, Ben, I've just seen a study in Australia that shows the food in the supermarkets only has 10% of the nutrients that it used to and should have. I was like, oh my gosh, have you seen anything for New Zealand? She goes, no, I haven't, but it'd be very similar. And I was like, oh really? Why will it be similar? Is it because of mineral depleted soils? And she's like, no, but that's a contributing factor. But the main reason is nitrogen use, and New Zealand uses more nitrogen per hectare than Australia. I was like, oh my gosh, well, how does excess nitrogen then cause plants, to not have nutrition in it? And she goes, well, plants send down roots to access the minerals in the soil through the mycorrhizae and fungi and bacteria within the soil. And when you put excess nitrogen on the plant, you lose up to 90% of the root structure. Okay, because part of the reason plants send down roots is to fix nitrogen in nitrogen fixing nodules, even if it's not a legume. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so then the plant can only access the minerals in the top 10% of the soil. So what happens is we end up with huge plants that taste like water. And for me, this closed the loop around years earlier when I did my nutrition analysis software, finding that people were so massively deficient because the nutrients aren't in the soil anymore. And this is a major, major problem. And this is why we're struggling to get the nutrients we need, even when you eat a good diet, even when you eat, a vegetable, plant-based diet with good quality fats and proteins. So I'm a huge fan of people growing your own food. And for those of you who follow me, you'll know that I live on a 15-acre permaculture, organic, nutrient-dense farm where we grow about 80% of the food we eat. And the reason being is when I discovered this, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't buy the sort of food I want to eat. I'm going to have to grow it. I actually spent $10,000 in 4 years remineralizing our vegetable garden. Okay, so I'm a huge fan of you growing your own food. So what I recommend is eat a varied, nutrient-dense diet that's right for you. So you've got to try and stabilize your blood sugar levels as much as possible from your diet you're eating, okay? By eating the right levels of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates for you. But unfortunately, in the modern world, you're not going to be getting the calorie. Well, let's put it this way. I believe you're not getting, and the research shows that you're not getting the nutrients you need just from the diet to meet the way you would want to live your life. So I recommend topping up with supporting nutritional products. So going back 10 years ago, I was doing a lot of weekend seminars and people used to say to me, Ben, what do you recommend I take? And so I was recommending vitamin D with boron and selenium, some antioxidant supplement, a B vitamin supplement, a vitamin C supplement with bioflavonoids, some macro mineral supplement, a trace mineral supplement, an iodine supplement, a zinc supplement, and a fish oil. Okay, now I know that's a lot. And then we were getting incredible results. And then one day a lady came up to me and she goes, Ben, I'm feeling the best I've felt in years. She goes, but it's a real pain in the ass taking all these supplements. She goes, is there not one that I could take? And I go, no, there's not one supplement that has all these things in. There's not one thing that's missing in New Zealand soils. There's not one thing that has all of these things in. And she was like, okay. And she looked at me and she goes, well, can't you make one? Well, I'd never considered making nutritional products. I'm a clinical nutritionist. I'd just never considered it. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea, because I was taking them and it was a pain in the ass. So I went to one of the biggest manufacturers in New Zealand, they couldn't do it. I went to one of the biggest manufacturers in Australia, they couldn't do it. And anyway, ended up at one of the biggest manufacturers in the world, and B Pure One was born. So with B Pure One, we were able to put basically 8 supplements into one supplement. Okay, we weren't able to get the fish oil in there because of stability reasons. So this is what it's got in it. So it's like a B vitamin supplement. Okay, not only a B vitamin, but B1, B2, B3, B4, B6, B12, B7, B9, okay, B5. And so it's also a vitamin C supplement. It's also got vitamin D. It's also obviously got fat-soluble vitamins like A and E. It's got your iodine in it. It's got zinc in it. It's got selenium, copper, chromium, molybdenum, these trace elements. And then it's got a whole bunch of antioxidants, and then just in case you're not eating leafy greens, it's in a base of organic leafy greens. Now, we couldn't get it all into one bottle because one capsule, because it'd be too big to swallow. So the recommended daily dose is 5 capsules a day, 3 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. Okay, so it's kind of like taking 8 products in one. So top tip number 7 is to take a high quality multivitamin product to pick up on what's missing. All right. And so I just wanted to show you this research. This is the prevalence of magnesium and zinc deficiency. Now, this research is not from sort of Women's Weekly or something like that. This is from the US Department of Agriculture. All right. So the estimates of individuals who do not consume 100% of the dietary reference intake of magnesium and the recommended daily allowance of zinc. So look at some of these things like between 60 and 90 odd percent. So 58 and 90%. Okay. So, that's a huge amount of the population are not getting the minimum they need. Why not? Because the food, the nutrients aren't in the soil anymore, which is crazy. All right. So let me just tell you why cheap supplements don't work. They put cheap forms of minerals and vitamins that can't be absorbed. So if you go look at cheap supplements, you'll see oxide forms like zinc oxide. So by the way, iron oxide, what's that? That's rust. So they're putting oxide forms. They're putting things like calcium carbonate in there. So that's lime. Right, they're just putting very cheap forms that are very poorly absorbable. Now, if you take calcium carbonate lime and put it on your vegetable garden, yes, you're going to get some vegetables with more calcium because the bacteria and the fungi will chelate it up. All right. So often these cheap supplements, they actually haven't got enough to make a difference. They're just hitting the bare minimum of what you need. So actually, when you take them, you don't actually feel a difference from taking them. They don't have what's missing in our soils. In modern soils, they've got minimal antioxidants. They're no whole food base. There's no superfoods in them. And often I get worried that there's uncertified manufacturers. They're not actually testing the raw materials when they're coming in and not testing on the way out to make sure that what's actually is in the bottle, if you know what I mean. And so really important that we take good quality nutritional supplements. Our ancestors didn't supplement. Why do we need to? Now, for many years, I thought this, how comes our ancestors didn't need to supplement? And yet they were healthy on their traditional diets. Yes, they were dying from other things, from mortality, infections, because they didn't have modern medicine and antibiotics like we do today. But there's many reasons, like modern farming techniques, mineral depleted soils, modern food conveniences. Most of the food we're eating, even though we think it's fresh, is old. All right. Increased stress, decreased absorption. All right. So when you have increased stress, you need more nutrients to run these metabolic pathways within your body. A lot of people have got gut issues in the modern world because of the foods they're eating, and that's then causing absorption issues. And then we've got, we are living in the most environmentally toxic times of all time, and our bodies can deal with this, but we need the nutrients to be able to detoxify through the liver and kidneys. And there's a lack of whole nutrient-dense foods. People aren't eating the liver, the kidneys. I was just talking about how to my children this morning how the Scots eat offal. Haggis. And so like we were talking about, eating haggis, but people don't really do that so much anymore. Okay, and we also know that optimal levels are above baseline and above the RDA. Now, we get lots of incredible praise for B Pure One on a daily level, and what I'd recommend is just go check out our Facebook community, and you're going to see incredible praise there for B Pure One. I know how powerful this information is because I've seen it help thousands of people, whether that's with their energy, whether it's helping them manage their weight, their hormones, or simply just feeling better within themselves. And so I've put together a package that really allows you to implement tonight's information with the greatest success, and it allows you to also get the B Pure program worth $99 for free. But first of all, I want to ask you a couple of questions. The first question is, why do you want to improve your nutrition? The next question is, what's the cost if you don't improve your nutrition? What's it going to cost you in the future? Now, really, you've got two choices. The first one is that you carry on doing what you've been doing, or the second one is to make a change. Now, we know that making change is tough, but this is why I've made this program as easy as possible for you to implement this for fantastic results. I've got an exclusive web class offer for you, where I want to give you the B Pure program for free. And what it does, it includes B Pure One, okay, which is this multivitamin and mineral supplement. It's like 8 supplements in one that covers the base nutrients that you need. And then we also want to give you B Pure 3, which obviously is high strength, pure fish oil. And then I want to give you the B Pure program for free. I also want to give you a 15-minute consultation, okay, for free. So you can chat to one of my consultants and chat to them about, whatever you want regarding nutrition. Like, maybe you've got sugar cravings and things like that, and you want some strategies around that. So the total value is $334, and it's $139. All right. So this is a one-time offer just because you've spent the time to sit and listen to this. And what this really does is it's going to allow you to implement tonight's information with the greatest power. So that you can implement tonight's information and really go forward tomorrow in your life going forward and implement tonight's information. Now, the B Pure 1 and B Pure 3, it's on auto ship, which means there's 2 months supply. So in 2 months supply, you're going to run out. In 2 months time, you're going to run out. Now, what we can do with this offer, you can again get B Pure 1 and 3 for $139. So you keep that low price, okay, and we'll send it to you automatically. Now, if you don't want that, you can just cancel at any time. That's fine. All right. And so we also have a money back guarantee. So if for any reason within the next 30 days you're not happy, not completely satisfied with this, you can just return the products, and by returning the products, we'll go ahead and give you a full refund. Okay, so it's a money back guarantee. It's risky. The reason I do this is I want you to see how good you can feel. And I'm so confident that once you start eating this way and start taking some high quality nutritional supporting products, that you're going to feel so darn good that you're just going to keep going and going and going. And that's how the journey goes. Okay, so that's why we've got a money back guarantee. Don't forget to join the Be Pure community on Facebook. We've got an incredible community there. I want to thank you for coming and joining in on this first web class. And I'm going to jump out of the webinar, jump out this screen and come back and answer some questions. So if you've got any questions around, what products or anything around that, please do ask them, and we can go from there. So Catherine, can you open a Be Pure 1 capsules and put them in a smoothie? Yes, you can for children. What I'd recommend is do it dosing weight. So that's an adult dose. 12 capsules is for 12-year-old and older. But what I do for my children, I've got a 7 and a 10-year-old, so they take 3 capsules and 2 capsules. Okay, so that you can break them open. They kind of taste a little bit like vitamin C and a little bit garlicky, but you can certainly put them in a smoothie, no problem at all. Very good. So if you have any problems around paying or any technology paying stuff, just call us tomorrow, okay, and just say that you were on the webinar. So very good. So you get the Be Pure program for free. All right, so basically you get the Be Pure 1, Be Pure 3 for $139, and you get the Be Pure program for free, and you also get the 15-minute consult for free. The inflammation slides, what I may ask you to do is if you can just email in info@BePure, and we'll be able to do a PDF slide so you can get the slides, okay, for those of you. So this is a it's a one-time offer regarding all these things, okay? So I just want to reward you for coming to the webinar and spending this hour with me. So I hope you appreciate that. Very good. Okay. What we'll do, we may, loads of questions. If you're an Eskimo type but don't want to eat meat, can it be done as a vegetarian properly? Antonio, this is a great question. If you're a true Eskimo type, you're not going to probably be able to stabilize your blood sugar levels just from eating plant foods. The reason being is even if you eat beans and legumes, that they've still got a lot of carbohydrates in them. So then, that makes it obviously very difficult to stabilize your blood sugar level. So then it's just a decision around, what you want in your life. All right. And so it's just one of those things. Does the program work if you're on a FODMAP diet? So you're certainly going to have to modify the diet if you're on a FODMAP diet. So what I'd recommend is eliminate the FODMAP foods like, garlic and onions from the recipes. Because as you know, FODMAP diets are, they're very difficult to follow long term. And so, yeah, it's very, very difficult to follow long term. So what we generally do with FODMAP diets is we have people on them short term while we do stool testing. And once we found stool testing and find what is the bacteria that's the unfriendly bacteria that's causing the problems, and so we eliminate that unfriendly bacteria, we then like to redo a stool test to make sure we've eliminated it, and then invariably people can then add these foods back in, because being on a FODMAP program long term, it can be really as you know, very, very challenging. So for those of you who just want to get the program, you can just get the program that's available on the Be Pure website. It's $99. Best way to find out your macronutrient type is to is probably to do the Be Pure program, because then it takes you step by step how to do it. Other questions? Do you take probiotics? Yes, I do. I do a variety of probiotics, but I also try and get as many beneficial bacteria from the foods that I'm eating as much as possible. Okay, so I believe I did a study on traditional cultures, and they were getting about 15 servings of probiotics a day. And so, we've got to be trying to get as many of these things like sauerkraut, raw dairy products are going to be, easy ways. And apple cider vinegar is another really easy way. Okay. Hi, Helen. What's your view on eating little and often, like 6 small meals a day? What effect? I believe everyone's got different sized stomachs. Actually, the research shows that everyone's got different sized stomachs. So when you eat a big meal, for some people, they've only got a little stomach. Okay, so they can't eat a big meal, whereas other people, they've got big stomachs and they need to eat big meals in order to feel full. So like for me, I've got a big stomach, so I do much better on big meals, 3 big meals a day, with usually 1 snack, and whereas other people, they'll do better on sort of 5, 6 smaller meals because they don't actually have a very big stomach. They can't can't eat much at the time. So, hey, Kate, what's the best milk to have? Best milk, I'm a huge fan of raw milk, okay? So that's like straight from the cow. Now, obviously, that's quite, you need to just find a local raw milk supplier in order to do that in New Zealand, because it's only legal to sell it from the farm gate. Stepping up from there, I'd be looking at a non-homogenized, okay, and ideally A2. But certainly non-homogenized. Homogenization is a real problem. It's where they damage the fats by forcing them through a filter at high pressure, which then damages the fats. So at least blue top, full fat milk, okay, non-homogenized. Raw examples of raw dairy for probiotics: raw milk, okay, yogurt, kefir. So these kind of things would be good ones. Hey Jill, do you eat meat? Yes, I do. I eat a pretty much a plant-based diet with meat 3 times a day. So I'm kind of like a vegan with meat 3 times a day. And that's kind of a pegan, they call it. I think like a cross between paleo and vegan. And so yeah, I do eat meat. How about A2 milk? Question coming in. A2 is fantastic. Hey Rachel, great. Pleased you had a 15-minute consult looking at doing one of our programs. If you have any other questions, Rachel, don't hesitate to get back in contact with us, okay? That'll be great. Hey Amy, thanks. I take my BPL 1 and 3. Also estro, do you need iron supplements as well? Now, we don't put iron in BPL 1 for a number of reasons, and generally we find that when people get their guts working really well and they're eating right for their macronutrient profile, then they're going to get adequate iron. Having said that, if you are somebody, like with endometriosis, or you're somebody who has very heavy menses, so you're losing a lot of blood, then you may need to take an extra iron supplement. All right, so that's good. Can you recommend a kombucha recipe? Yes, I'm pretty sure I did a blog post about that. Just Google Be Pure recipe kombucha, you'll probably find it. Hey Mike, what about clogging arteries with high-fat diet? It's great question. So the research on fat now has really shifted, and actually one study looking at dietary interventions, they looked at nurses over 10 years, and they found the #1 food that was associated with whether the nurses would have heart disease or not, okay, was whether they're eating high glycemic index breakfast cereals. A lot of research is now coming out showing that saturated fats are not associated with heart disease, and that it's sugar that's probably driving, it's inflammation. So in the late 1990s, a group of German scientists showed it's inflammation that drives heart disease, not saturated fats. And again, like a lot of the research is now supporting that. So yeah, I'd recommend start reading and start learning about some of this stuff, and then make an informed decision about whether you want fat in your diet or not. So for me, I've got real concerns around heart disease. My older brother had a heart attack, quadruple bypass at 39. I've got genetic issues around heart disease. I get a calcium scan score done every 10 years just as a preventative. I'm obviously monitoring all of my blood markers, cholesterols, et cetera, and I eat a very, very high-fat, high-protein diet because I believe it's one of the most protective things that you can do, because you've got to eat something, right? And so this is the key. Oh, there's the kombucha. Thanks, Lily. There's the kombucha article. So kombucha is a fermented tea drink. You want to let the fermentation go nice and long so that you're breaking down the sugars. All right. Very good. Are there BPO magnesium, melatonin type subs for increased sleep, please? Yes, we've got an incredible product called Magnesium Restore. We don't have melatonin in it. Melatonin's a medication in New Zealand, so you can't buy that over the counter. But yeah, we have an incredibly effective magnesium supplement called the BPO Magnesium Restore. So yeah, there you go, wonderful. Is your program suitable for vegans? Vicky, it's going to be dependent. If you come out as a carbohydrate type, absolutely. All right, you're going to be able to modify it for vegans, but whenever you cut out any major food group, it becomes increasingly difficult to get nutrition. So like for me, I very much come from a nutrition first standpoint. Now, I was vegetarian, by the way, for 6 years because of the ethical reasons about eating meat. But I found that I actually couldn't be healthy without eating meat. I know that sounds crazy, but and so for me, my body craves it. I need meat and I need fat to stabilize my blood sugar levels. And so, yeah, try and see how you get on. Cool, some messaging going on there. Are your BPO vitamins safe to take while breastfeeding? Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at any kind of these supplements, it's recommended like in pregnancy, and then also beyond pregnancy. So obviously postnatal depletion occurs after having the baby, having a baby is like having a parasite with no regard for the host. In the nicest possible way, I've got 2 children, but what happens is the baby will take all of the nutrition the baby needs from the mum. And so what then happens is that the mum gives all of her nutrition to the baby, and that's why, you know, most babies born with 10 fingers, 10 toes, right? Because they just take what they need from their mum, but then that leads the mum with postnatal depletion. So really, really important to rebuild mum after having children, okay? Because as you probably know, even just breastfeeding really drains you. I know Linda felt that it was kind of like, towards the end of our second one, it was like sucking the life out of her, and we weaned Macy a little earlier because it was just so hard on her. And traditional cultures, by the way, used to, you know, deliberately hold a number of years in between babies to allow mothers to recover. Whereas the opposite in the modern world, we're trying to squeeze babies into a shorter time period as possible, so that, you know, they're in the same window going through school and then get back to work, and et cetera, et cetera. So, hey Lisa, do you recommend whey protein powder as a good protein source? I think whey protein powder is fantastic if you can tolerate it. Now, whey protein is a very complex protein, and a lot of people can't tolerate it. And so it's just going to be a matter of trying it and seeing. Now, if you start taking a lot of whey protein, you start getting a lot of really foul-smelling flatulence, that's a good sign you're not tolerating it. If you start taking it and your asthma gets worse or your skin flares up in regards to eczema, that's a good sign that it's not working for you, okay? So, yeah. So, hey, Richard, what are some good snacks for the high-protein end of the nutrient profile? So the good snacks are nuts and seeds, okay? So raw nuts and seeds are going to be fantastic, and then meat. I know that sounds like kind of out there as a thing, but, you know, I would go with meat. I had a top endurance cyclist, and he was a protein type, which is kind of rare for a top. He was, previous to his cycling, he was a top rugby player. And so anyway, we switched out. He's using gel things, sugar gel packs for cycling. We switched them out, and he had chicken drumsticks. Okay, and he'd eat chicken, and he'd go great on that. Okay, as a great snack. So you've got to be looking at fats, proteins, snacks, like naturally dried jerkies and things like that, all going to be really good snacks for protein types. Hey, Mitchell, can we eat too much of a good food? Yeah, we can. Absolutely. So you can still eat too much. All of that applies. You can overwhelm your digestive system by eating too much. You can literally just eat too many calories still. Okay, but the thing about the calories is that when you're full, you tend not to eat. And so what I found when people start eating this kind of dietary way, their weight naturally stabilizes because they're just full. It's also a wonderful way to help with sugar cravings and moving away from sugar and things like that. So, yeah, what food is good to eat before you go to bed as a snack to help with sleep? Probably number one would be turkey. Believe it or not, lots of turkey. Turkey's not a food that you can buy too much in New Zealand, but there's a lot of wild turkeys around. And on our property, we've had a couple. And but turkey's got a lot of tryptophan in it. Chicken will probably still have decent tryptophan. So tryptophan gets converted through. You need B5 and vitamin C and zinc, but it gets converted through to serotonin, which then gets converted on to melatonin. So a wonderful food that you can eat before food. I'm not sure if I've ever seen any research on eating turkey and then sleeping better, but there's certainly high magnesium been shown to help with sleep as well. Can we truly leave a minimal impact on the environment even if we eat meat? I'm a meat eater, but absolutely. I believe we can. When you start looking at sustainable systems of agriculture, which I've studied for the last sort of 15 years, is that we actually need animals to close the carbon cycle and have sustainable systems of agriculture. So I think, you know, as we go forward, we've just got to get a lot smarter around diversity. And I think there's a lot of ways that we can be a lot more efficient and be environmentally sound and within food production. And so I think, you know, New Zealand, you know, at least they're still fed grass for the most part. All right, which is good, you know, regarding meat. And so, yeah, I definitely think we can. Does BPL1 have enough in it during pregnancy? Should be taken in conjunction with Elevate. So BPL1 will have enough, but I'd still take extra folic acid, and then I'd eat some extra seaweed for iodine. Okay, but I'd take extra folic acid, probably 300 to 400 micrograms of folic acid, and then some extra seaweed. Are cooked veggies better for your gut than raw? Depends on what's going on in your gut. And so if, often people with, say, like ulcerative colitis or something like that, we'll get them to eat cooked vegetables because they are easier on the digestive system, easier to break down. But having said that, if you haven't got any gut issues, eating raw foods can be very beneficial as well. And there's different nutrients that come through being raw versus cooked. So I'm not a raw foodist. Okay, it's about, again, it's about getting a balance. So generally in summer, I'll probably get 80% of my carbohydrates in the raw form. Why? Because I'm eating salads the whole time. I'm eating salad for breakfast, salad for lunch, salad for dinner, obviously with proteins for me. But in winter, I tend to want more cooked food. So there may be more soups, steamed vegetables, risottos, perhaps. I go easy on the risottos because it's a lot of carbohydrates for me, but yeah, it's about eating the right foods. Hi, Cora. What do you think about intermittent fasting? Yeah, I think intermittent fasting's great. I'm not a huge fan of like the 5-2 because I think it's too stressful for a lot of people. So 5-2 is where you eat for 5 days, you fast for 2. All right. Lots of incredible research around the benefits of calorie restriction, intermittent fasting. I tend to go more with time-restricted eating and recommend time-restricted eating a lot more. So time-restricted eating is where you basically, so like for me, I usually have about a 15-hour window where I don't eat. So I eat for 9 hours of the day and I fast for 15 hours of the day. All right. And so I find time-restricted eating, you get a lot of, it looks like you get a lot of the benefits of fasting, but it's much easier on your system and it's much just easier to do, full stop. Okay, I've done a lot of fasting in the past. Longest I've done is 10-day water fast, but it took me 3 months to recover my muscle mass. So I'm not a huge fan of long-term fasting. Hi, Joe. You found that the BPO adrenal fatigue hard on my stomach. Any tips to make it easy? Yeah, it can be. It's a raw animal protein. So the key is to take it in the middle of food. Okay, so ideally in the middle of eating some meat. If you're having a piece of chicken, okay, it's got to be taken in the middle of food for a lot of people. It's a very, very strong raw protein. Very good. Hi, Aruna. How to test what? Best way to find your test. Best way probably to find your test is with tonight's offer for $139, you get BPO1, BPO3, and you get the BPO program for free. And so what I'd recommend is doing that. Hey, Mike, you did a 9-day water fast, didn't lose any muscle mass. Incredible. I think the key to that was I was still working and had a real high metabolism. Okay, whereas I think if you're going to do a prolonged fast, you really need to be relaxing. So I think that's probably, if I was to do another prolonged fast, I'd be looking to plan it in with that side. So Jill, I went to a lecture by a gut health scientist, and he said that a lot of things like depression is actually caused by poor gut health because serotonin, a lot of hormones, etc., start in the gut. Absolutely, I wouldn't maybe go so far as to say caused by it, but absolutely contribute massively. So yeah, a large percentage of our serotonin is synthesized within our gut. The precursors are synthesized within our gut. And so even though the serotonin made in our gut doesn't necessarily cross the blood-brain barrier, but we're still looking at this total serotonin load. So the gut has a huge impact on all these things. Hi, Joe. Adrenal or thyroid? Which one to sort out first? I always tend to go adrenals, okay? And then anyone with a thyroid issue, then you want to be moving away from processed grains as much as possible, gluten particularly, okay? So anyone, every case of underactive thyroid I've ever seen, gluten's been a problem, all right? Cool, coming around. Have you done much research into how to improve the effects of chilblains? I have not. That's interesting. I would certainly think, though, around vitamin D and blood flow would be a couple of things that I definitely. That's interesting, Gabriella. I used to get chilblains a lot as a child, and haven't had them in many, many years. And so, mind you, I had a lot of problems when I was a child, and including asthma. Asthma was probably my main one. But a lot of these things as I've got older, I've got healthier, and I guess a lot of that's down to my diet. But I would certainly be looking at the vitamin D would be one of the key things. What else we got here? Hi, Delcy. Suffered bad skin most of your life and adult cracked skin. Ideas on triggers. Most often, when we see skin issues, it's getting driven from the gut. Most often. Okay, so I would. It's tough to say whether it's gluten or dairy. I mean, basically, the top three are gluten, dairy, and eggs. All right, they're the top three we see. But I would be concerned that there's, maybe you've got a yeast or something like that that's driving the gut issue and the immune dysfunction. Okay, cool. Right. Well, I am going to let you get going. What's the time? So it's 8:20. So I want to thank you very much for coming. Thanks for listening. And if any of your questions, we'll find a way, hopefully, to answer your questions. Okay, going forward. So thanks for joining me, and I hope that's been insightful for you to help find what food is right for you. Okay, it's a journey. This is going to give you a good start on the journey. Start there and go well, be well, and God bless you all. Okay, thanks very much for checking in, and we'll see you next time. Okay, so bye for now. See ya.